catch the movers and shakers. The brightest minds from across the country talking about what makes them tick. This is Rock the Talk on indigomusic.com.
Hey, welcome back to yet another edition of Rock the Talk right here on indigomusic.com. I'm Melbin, and on the other side is a very popular comedian. He's been doing it for over 10 years. He's also works as a writer for National Geographic, and he's also been with the East India Company. And yes, I'm talking about Azeem Banatwalla. Azeem, thank you so much for joining me today on Rock the Talk.
Hey, my pleasure. Yeah, I mean, I was a part of East India Company. I invented a time machine and went back to colonize India.
Right. Azeem, first up, before we get started and before you pull my leg, we need to know about Zoom. I mean, comedy on Zoom calls these days. How's that going for you? Are you taking to it? Are you not liking it at all?
It's needs must, no, after a point. Like for performers, like being on stage is sort of like a drug. Where we've been addicted to it now for the last 10 years, and now it's 6 months of just complete withdrawal. And like any junkie, then you have to make do with whatever, crap is available to you. So in that case, that's Zoom here.
Okay, but have you learned anything new? I mean, is this working out for audiences? I mean, what is the response been like?
It is good in the sense that, like, for instance, earlier, if we wanted to do shows for people in the US or UK, we would physically have to go take a flight, spend lakhs of rupees and go there.
Right.
Now we can just do the easy thing of just everyone sitting at home. I'm sitting in my room performing in my boxers, somebody's sitting in their bed or on the couch or on the toilet seat and watching, and it's the same for them. So it's good.
Right. But does that take away from the experience? So, I mean, is that something that...
Of course it does. I mean, you cannot replace the feeling of a live audience, but it comes maybe, say, 60-70% close. I think the one thing that we have to contend with a lot is the lag in between the punchline and the laughter, because obviously the technology takes that 1 second. So for that 1 second, you're freaking out. Has this joke worked? Are they laughing? And then you hear the laughter, like, okay, it's working.
All right, yeah. And also, the lockdown has really taught a lot of people many lessons. And so, any lessons it's taught you, or are you able to write more jokes?
I think primarily the lesson was I should have kept my day job, man. But I mean, we've had to work on like a lot of different, obviously for me, I was primarily a live comedian, and I would always, take this entire social media and YouTube game for granted, saying that, I don't want to get involved in this rat race. I'll focus and get my audience through live shows. But now we don't have a choice, right? Now it's like you have to create an entirely new skill set. So we've had to learn things like live streaming, whether it's streaming video games and people are watching, or just like it's streaming live podcasts. So a football podcast with another comedian, Neville, which has now just become a live stream show. So we've had to adapt and evolve, and I think everyone at some level has had to do it, because I was talking to a friend the other day and he's like, so what's the change like for you? So I was like, it's sort of like, if you used to work in IT and then one day your boss says, now we will judge you based on your cooking, and we're not going to pay you also for it. So this is what life has become now.
Yeah, it really is that bad. So is that why you got into your new podcast? I was going to come to that. The podcast. Did you start that during the lockdown? It wasn't.
Oh no, it's actually been going for a year. We started it as just like a traditional podcast, but through the lockdown, it evolved to being like sort of like a live show where we interact with fans in real time. And we even watch matches, and sort of like people have the match going on and they have us on the side doing our own, time pass and joking about the match and all. So it's interesting. It's something we would have never thought of if lockdown hadn't happened. So yeah.
All right. And also your time with National Geographic, you used to be a writer for them. And then how did comedy happen?
So it was, I mean, for me, I feel it's a series of just happy coincidences. Because I got the job at National Geographic Traveler. At the time, I did not know the magazine was going to be National Geographic Traveler. I just got the job as travel magazine, international travel magazine. And the people were sort of working on the behind the scenes of getting the magazine launched and all of that. And during that time, there was another magazine attached to the same publication or the same publisher called The Man magazine, which is by Malayalam Manorama. Because of that, I was writing for that lifestyle magazine, and then I got a chance to interview Veer Das for the cover story. And that was when comedy, 2010, it was when comedy was just starting in India. And I used to write humor content in college, for pocket money for a couple of these websites, UTV, Bindas, and all of that stuff. And it just so happened that my editor said, hey, these open mic things are going, you write humor, why don't you go and try it out and see how it goes and write about the experience. So my first open mic, first time I tried out comedy, was actually a work assignment. And I went there and it went well, and that's why I tried it again. If it had not gone well, I would never gone again.
2010, I think that was the best time to get into comedy in India. Now, there is a whole feeling that right now maybe there are too many people doing it. Do you think it's as easy to get popular these days, or
not at all? Not at all. And we're seeing that now, right? Where initially, like, we were right place, right time in 2010, 2011 when it started, when there were maybe 15 or 20 people doing stand-up comedy. And we're seeing how difficult it is now, in the sense that now that stand-up comedy is not there, we're all of us who are sort of traditional stand-up comedians, so to speak, are now having to get into this digital game of Instagram and creating these weird short form TikTok videos and dance videos and all that. Obviously we don't have the skill set for all of that, and now we're sort of experiencing how life was for people who started doing stand-up after the first wave, because now we're starting to do like digital content after the first wave, and now it's difficult to break into that game. So we were very lucky, the first few people who got into it.
And it's not just that, right? I mean, it's not only that, okay, you had the first mover advantage, it's also the crowds are changing. Everybody is woke these days, meaning they are asleep, and so they get offended by literally everything. So, I mean, is it also a little difficult to say jokes? Are you sometimes scared for your life?
Well, I talk about this a lot in the new show that I was touring and still do on Zoom once a month. It's called Between the Lines. And it's basically about the left wing and right wing in this country both have lines that you cannot cross. And in both cases, if you cross the line, there's a consequence. So in one case, you get death threats. The other case, someone writes a blog. Both of which are equally threatening in their own way. But I mean, it's we had a lot of trouble, like as a comedy scene earlier, maybe 3 or 4 months ago, when this entire thing had happened about people making jokes, and a lot of people perceiving it as make jokes about one particular religion and all of that. But these things come and go. I think you have one of these things once every year. Some of it is genuine outrage. A lot of it sometimes is sort of politically motivated. But you learn to live with it. It's okay.
All right. But I mean, are you like aware of that, and do you change how you write a joke because of the situation?
I think so. There is one aspect of we write certain types of jokes for live shows, and then there's certain kind of things that we write for the stuff that goes on YouTube. Because the live show has a filter, that somebody is physically buying a ticket and knowing what they've signed up for, and also they're spending money to do it. So there is if they get offended, it's sort of their loss in a sense. It's the Indian mentality, if I've spent money, I have to get my value for it.
Right. So you're more careful on YouTube.
Yeah, because over there it's free and there's no restriction or filter to the audience. Like, for instance, if I see somebody is in a live show is creating a problem, or is like looking like they're offended or whatever, we can talk to them directly and say, hey, are you offended by this? Should I tone this down? Would you like to leave? We can give you your money back, whatever. There are those options. Whereas on YouTube, they also have the option of just clicking stop and going and watching the other 3 trillion videos that are there on the internet. But that's how we are now, I think. And even there was that entire documentary, The Social Dilemma, where how these online systems are made in such a way that you want to keep watching, you want to get upset, you want to get offended, because that sort of keeps you on the platform, which is beneficial to the advertisers and the platform itself.
All right. I mean, you have to feel special in some way. So
of course, whatever way you get validation, right? Yeah.
Also, I need to know this. I mean, have you ever had an interaction with a very annoyed audience member? And if you have, maybe you can just explain how that went.
I don't think in live shows really we've had that much happening. I know of other comedians who've had issues, and typically this, as I said, it happens when there are free shows or really cheap ticket shows. because a lot of people in India still do not understand like really what stand-up comedy as an art form is. It is meant to push the boundaries. It is meant to sort of challenge the way you think. It is meant to make you feel slightly uncomfortable in whatever way. A political joke makes you feel, you know, slightly uncomfortable about your political belief. The same way, like a joke about marriage may make you feel slightly insecure about your own marriage, and that's where the laughter comes from, because you relate.
Right.
Like, oh, okay, that same thing happens to me.
Right.
But generally it happens online. Online I get weird messages every second day from weird people. I've started just for fun. Every time I get a message, I just add the Mumbai police to the conversation. It's a lot of fun.
All right. And so, I mean, the lockdown, of course, has affected you in many different ways. And so anything that's cooking right now, or are you just waiting for things to open up eventually?
I was doing a lot of stuff initially. The first 3 months, there was still, you know, that level of motivation that, you know, let's do something. I wrote, like, me and my wife, we had an idea for like a web series, which we spent a month and a half developing. And it was based on lockdown. But a lot of the platforms we pitched it to said they did not want content about lockdown, even though they loved the story or whatever. So it was, I mean, there's been a lot of like doing work and knockbacks, because like you do the work and you don't really see the outcome of it, which has taken a bit of a toll. I was doing a little bit of writing work, you know, writing a bit of dialogue here and there, writing scripts, that kind of stuff. But otherwise lockdown has just been now last 3 months I've just been sitting at home, like it's a sine wave of productivity and depression. It's just like two weeks productive, 2 weeks depressed. That's how it is.
All right. Azeem, we have a rapid fire round coming up right now, but before that, any fresh jokes you've written on the year 2020 that you would like to maybe
I don't know. I haven't really written jokes, but I've had a few thoughts about 2020, like specifically how people, I mean, there's so many circumstances in 2020, right? There's a pandemic, there's, you know, political things that are happening, there's societal things, there's all your Black Lives Matter, racial issues.
Yes.
Yet somehow the lowest common denominator that it comes to is people blaming the year 2020. Like, this is 2020s. We will blame a number, you know, like 2020, I hate you. It's like saying like I hate 12, you know, like the number itself has no impact on the situation. And I feel it's this real sort of millennial Gen Z thing that where if it's too complicated to understand, we'll blame the simplest thing that's possible to do.
It's a great way to remove yourself from responsibility as well.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, Azeem, time for the rapid fire round. So quick answers, of course, you know how this works. And so I'm just going to shoot. If you weren't a comedian, what would you be?
Computer repair guy.
All right. What's your favorite joke that you've ever written?
I think it's the one joke, if you see the last video I put out, it's a visual gag about using internet abbreviations and how they all sound like Muslim names. You'll see it online on YouTube.
Lovely. All right. What's your worst on-stage experience?
I think probably it was one show that I did in Singapore where I went, it was the British club, so it was an entirely British audience. And I, you know, as a comedian, I've been inspired by mostly British comedians. And I thought, you know, this British crowd, it'll be amazing and I'm going to destroy the show. And I went on stage, I died for 35 minutes straight, not one laugh. And and I thought, you know, it's just a bad show, a bad crowd. And the next comedian came after me and he killed. So it makes you feel even worse when you've had a bad gig and the next guy comes and completely crushes. That was a bad day.
I mean, but you went at it for 35 minutes just like that. I mean, wow.
Yeah, you don't have a choice. You have to go. You've been paid for 30 minutes, so you got to go.
Wow, amazing. All right. If you could trade spots with another comedian, international or Indian, doesn't matter, who would it be?
Probably Bill Burr. Just because he's built his audience doing exactly the kind of comedy that he wants. And he's not the most famous comedian in the world, but he can go anywhere in the world and sell out a show. And that's what I want from life.
And it's funny you mentioned that, because I also wanted to ask you this question as well, because some comedians say that you've got to cater to the crowd, but then there are some comedians who say let the crowd find you. So which side do you stand?
I mean, I genuinely wish I could be one of the comedians that could cater to the crowd, because it would make my career trajectory very easy. But yeah, I mean, I like to do the kind of stuff that makes me laugh and the stuff that makes me satisfied. And maybe it'll take me 5 years longer to find that same audience, but I think it'll be worth it then.
All right, we'll leave it at that. Azeem, thank you so much for joining me today on Rock Talk. It was an absolute pleasure.
Pleasure. Thank you very.
And maybe you can close with a message for 2020 people, going through this experience that is 2020.
I think just realize that you're not alone. Everyone is going through the same kind of nonsense that you are, and it's okay to not be productive for a day. It's okay to feel sad about it. I've realized that my best strategy for this is I allow myself 1 hour in a day to just mope and sulk and be like, oh, this whole world is against me, this world sucks. But do that for 1 hour, get it out of your system, sit, rant, shout, scream, cry, whatever you want to do, and then get back to your normal day.
Perfect. I think everybody needs a vent for sure. Yeah. Well, wasn't that fun? It's always great to have a comedian on Rock the Talk. That was Azeem Banatwalla. And for more such amazing conversations, you know what to do. Stay right here, indigomusic.com.